The sound came first. Not a knock, not a scream, a whisper so small it barely existed in the October night. Please don't let my daddy see me. 14 Harley Davidsons sat cooling in the gravel lot, ticking and popping like metal hearts, slowing after a long ride. The Hells Angels Ridge Rest. Chapter Eastern Tennessee had rolled in 20 minutes earlier. Most of the men were still in the garage, some cleaning parts, some drinking beer from cans that sweated in the autumn cold, some doing nothing at all, just existing in that space between night and morning where time feels suspended. Mac Calloway road name. Steele, 46 years old, chapter president, sat near the entrance, sorting receipts for a charity ride planned for the weekend. Brown hair streaked with silver pulled into a low ponytail. A scar from his left eyebrow to his jaw, a gift from a prison fight 14 years ago. Hands that had broken bones and built engines in equal measure. A voice like gravel dragged over broken glass, but softer than it used to be. Softer than it had any right to be. Kodiak Sullivan sat beside him. Road name Bear, though calling him Bear was like calling the ocean damp. 6'5", 280 pounds blonde beard that reached his chest, a face that made children cry in grocery stores and made grown men cross streets. But his hands, those massive scarred hands, were gentle when they needed to be. He just didn't need them to be gentle very often. Silas Fletcher, call sign Gears, sat in the back corner behind 3 monitors, running logistics for the chapter's legitimate motorcycle repair business. Sandy brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of quiet that felt like its own language. He didn't look like he belonged with the Hells Angels. He'd been patched in for 11 years. He belonged more than most. The rest scattered through the garage in various states of winding down. Vernon Blackwell Smoke, Wallace Monroe Bishop, and 9 others, Falcon Russ Gage, Viper Knox, Axel Tank, Ridge, Colt, Hammer, Flint. 14 men, 14 histories written in scar tissue and felony records. 14 reasons the world had written them off as lost causes. Then the whisper came again. Please, I need help. Kodiak's hand went to his belt. Hammer stood up from where he'd been checking tire pressure. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the half-open garage door. Steele held up one hand. Wait. He walked toward the door slowly. The way you move when you don't know what's on the other side. The way you move when instinct says danger, but curiosity says look anyway. What he found made him stop breathing. A girl, 5 years old, maybe younger. Blonde hair so tangled it looked like she'd been dragged through brambles. A thin pink nightgown, torn at the hem, stained with dirt and something darker. No shoes. Her feet were cut and bleeding, leaving small red prints on the concrete. She was shaking so hard her teeth clicked together in the cold. And she was holding a purple backpack covered in cartoon butterflies pressed against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her eyes were blue, enormous, completely empty of anything a child's eyes should hold. Please, she said again, and her voice cracked. Don't let my daddy see me. He's coming. He always finds me. Steele dropped to one knee. His leather vest creaked. His knees popped. He made himself as small as a man like him could get. Hey, look at me. What's your name, Raven? Barely a breath. Raven Hartley. Okay, Raven, I'm Steele. You see all these guys behind me. She peered past him. 14 tattooed leather-wearing men staring back at her. Some with beards, some with shaved heads. All of them looking like the kind of people mothers warn their children about. Yeah, every single one of them is going to make sure nobody hurts you. You understand you're safe now. Raven studied his face. She studied the scar. She studied his eyes like she was looking for something specific, some sign that would tell her whether to trust or run. Then she said something that knocked the air out of every man in that garage. Mama told me to find you. She said, find the men with the loud bikes. She said they look scary, but they fight the real monsters. Dead silence. Not a cough. Not a breath. Not even the sound of the wind moving through the open door. Kodiak moved first. He walked forward slowly, carefully, like approaching an injured animal, and crouched down beside Steele. For a man his size, the gesture was almost absurd. His knees nearly touched his beard. Your mama sounds real smart, Kodiak said softly. Where is she right now? Sweetheart, Raven's lower lip started to shake. Her fingers turned white against the backpack straps. Mama's not waking up anymore. Kodiak looked at Steele. Steele didn't blink. What do you mean? Raven? Steele kept his voice level. Steady, like talking someone off a ledge. There was red on her face, Raven whispered. And on the floor, lots of it. Daddy said she fell down. But mamas don't fall like that. I saw what happened. I was hiding. I saw. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The garage felt like a vacuum where sound went to die. Raven Steele said, and his voice was so quiet now that the men in the back couldn't hear him. What's in your backpack? Raven looked down at it, held it tighter. Then she looked back up at Steele, and her eyes, those enormous, empty blue eyes, suddenly showed something. Not fear, something worse. Purpose. A 5-year-old child with purpose in her eyes. Mama packed it. She said, if anything bad happened, I take the bag and I don't stop. She said, everything inside is important. She made me practice. Practice, Kodiak said. Practice leaving. At night, in the dark. Which way to walk. How to be quiet. She made me do it 3 times so I wouldn't forget. Steele felt something twist in his chest. This wasn't a child who had stumbled here by accident. This was a child who had been trained to escape, by a mother who knew escape would one day be necessary. Can we look inside? Steele asked. I promise we'll give it right back. Raven hesitated. She looked at Kodiak. She looked at the men behind them. Then she unzipped the backpack herself. I'll show you. Mama said I should be the one to show. The first thing she pulled out was a sealed Ziploc bag. Inside it was a cell phone, cracked screen, smeared with something dark, reddish brown. Mama's phone, Raven said. She told me it has voice things on it. People talking. She said the police need to hear them. She set it down carefully on the concrete. The second thing was a yellow envelope. Inside, 3 sheets of paper folded neatly, covered in careful handwriting. A letter. At the top, in block letters, to Mac Calloway, President, Hells Angels Ridge Rest, Chapter. Steele's hand froze, reaching for it. She knew my name. Raven nodded. Mama said she picked you special. She said you were the right one. The third thing made Kodiak stand up and take a step back. And Kodiak didn't step back from anything. A knife. Kitchen knife. Small. Serrated. The blade was covered in dried blood. Dark. Crusted. Unmistakable. Raven held it by the very tip of the handle, using only 2 fingers, the way someone had carefully, deliberately taught her. Mama said this is proof, Raven said. Her voice had gone flat, mechanical. She was reciting instructions. She said it has finger pictures on it. Fingerprints, Gears said from somewhere behind them. His voice was barely there. Yeah, those. She said, don't touch the sharp part. Don't touch the red part. Just hold the end. Steele's jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. That's real good, Raven. You did exactly right. Is there anything else? Raven reached into the bottom of the backpack. Her small hand came out holding something, wrapped in a Disney princess handkerchief. Faded, washed 100 times. The kind a mother gives a daughter because it means something. She unwrapped it. A USB flash drive, small, silver, attached to a keychain shaped like a daisy. Mama said this is the most important one, Raven whispered. She said bad men will want it back. She said it has numbers and names that can put the bad men in jail forever. She held it up to Steele. She said, give it to someone brave. Steele took it. His hand was steady. His pulse was not. Gears. Gears was already moving. He took the drive, went to the back room where his workstation sat humming, and plugged it in. The compound was so quiet they could hear the computer boot up. 2 minutes later, Gears' voice came through the doorway. It was shaking. Steele. Everyone. You need to see this. What Gears found on that flash drive wasn't just evidence of a beating. It wasn't just evidence of a murder. It was the entire architecture of a criminal empire. 3 years of financial records, drug distribution routes through 4 counties, names, dealers, enforcers, buyers, suppliers, dates, dollar amounts, wire transfers, shell companies, and most damning of all, payments to law enforcement. 2 county sheriff's deputies, a court clerk, an assistant in the district attorney's office, all on the payroll. At the center of every page, every record, every transaction, Marcus Dalton Hartley. Raven's father. Jesus Christ, Rust muttered. Her mother built this, Gears said, scrolling through file after file, spreadsheets, scanned documents, screenshots of text messages. This isn't random. This is organized. This is meticulous. She was building a federal case from inside her own house. Steele picked up the yellow envelope. He opened it. He read the letter silently first, then aloud, because every man in that garage needed to hear it. To Mac Calloway, President Hells Angels Ridgerest Chapter. I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And Raven did what I trained her to do. I know who you are. I know what you've done. I know what the world thinks of you. But I also know what you did for that boy in Kentucky 3 years ago. I know you saved him when the system failed. I need you to do the same for my daughter. Steele's voice caught. He cleared his throat. Everything you need is in this bag. The phone has 14 recordings, conversations between my husband and his associates about drug shipments, money and threats against me and my daughter. The flash drive has 3 years of financial records I copied from his office computer. The knife has his fingerprints. He used it on me last Tuesday. I didn't report it. I couldn't. The police here answer to him. I tried going to the FBI 6 months ago. Agent named Brennan seemed trustworthy, but within 2 hours, Marcus knew about the meeting. There's a leak somewhere. I can't trust the system, but I can trust you. Steele paused. His throat was tight. Please protect Raven. Please believe her. Please don't let Marcus take her back. He told me once that if I ever tried to leave, he'd kill me and make Raven disappear. I believe him. My daughter is the bravest person I have ever known. She's 5 years old and she's already stronger than I ever was. I've trained her for this night for 3 years. She knows the route. She knows your name. She knows you'll keep her safe. Take care of her. Love her if you can. Nora Catherine Hartley. Steele folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. His hands were steady. His eyes were not. Nobody spoke for almost a minute. Then smoke, quiet, brown-haired military tattoos covering both arms, walked to the corner where Raven had curled up against the wall, hugging her backpack. He knelt down and held out a pair of wool socks, a granola bar, and a bottle of water. Here, little one. Raven looked up at him. Are you one of the monsters Mama told me about, the good kind? Smoke's face did something none of them had ever seen. It softened completely. Yeah, kid, the good kind. Raven took the socks and pulled them on. Her feet were so small they bunched at the toes. She ate the granola bar in 4 bites. She hadn't eaten since when nobody wanted to ask. Steele stood. His voice shifted, no longer soft, presidential. Gears, copy that drive 3 times. 3 different locations. One goes in the safe, one goes to a lawyer we trust. One gets buried somewhere only you and I know about. On it, Kodiak. Full lockdown. Nobody in, nobody out. Hammer and Colt on the front gate. Knox and Ridge on the rear perimeter. Flint get the motion lights on the tree line. Done. Bishop, I need you thinking about our next move. We can't go to local police. Half of them are in that drive. We go federal, FBI, Nashville office, but not tonight. Tonight we secure the girl and the evidence. Bishop nodded. What about the mother? The body Steele glanced at Raven. She was watching them, listening to every word. Not now, Steele said quietly. Not in front of her, but Raven had heard. Mama's in the basement, she said. Matter of fact. A 5-year-old stating a fact no 5-year-old should know. He put her there. He wrapped her up. I saw from the top of the stairs. Kodiak turned away. His shoulders were shaking. Raven Steele said, kneeling again, You don't have to talk about that right now. Mama said I should tell everything to the brave people. She said don't leave anything out because the bad men will lie and I have to tell the truth first. Steele looked at this girl, 5 years old, barefoot, bleeding, orphaned, sitting on the floor of a biker compound at 3 a.m. And he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time, maybe ever. Courage, real uncut, bone-deep courage, not the kind that comes from being fearless, the kind that comes from being terrified and doing it anyway. Your mama raised one hell of a girl, he said. She raised me to survive, Raven replied. That's what she said. Baby, I'm raising you to survive. It was 3:47 in the morning when Raven finally fell asleep. She'd fought it, jerking awake every time her eyes closed. Scanning the room, checking the door, making sure the backpack was still there. But exhaustion won. She curled into a ball. In the corner, Smoke's leather jacket draped over her, one hand still gripping the backpack strap. 14 men sat in that garage. Not one of them spoke above a whisper. We're in deep, Russ said. We've been in deep before, Kodiak replied. Not like this. This isn't a turf war. This isn't a deal gone wrong. There's a murdered woman, a kid, a federal-level drug operation, dirty cops. If Marcus finds out she's here, then he finds out, Steele said, and his voice was iron. And we deal with it. How Russ pressed. There are 14 of us. Marcus is connected. He's got money, he's got people, he's got law enforcement in his pocket. We hand this to the wrong person, that evidence disappears. And so does the girl. Then we don't hand it to the wrong person. Steele stood up. I didn't ask any of you to sign up for this. This isn't club business. This is something else. So if any man here wants to walk now. No judgment, no consequences. You walk out that door and you forget tonight happened. Silence. Nobody moved. That's what I thought, Steele said. He almost smiled. Gears, how long to copy the drive? Already done. 3 copies, encrypted, Kodiak, perimeter check, clean for now. Then we wait for morning. We call the FBI at 8. Hammer's voice crackled over the radio. Urgent, tight, Steele, 3 vehicles, Route 9, moving fast, no plates on 2 of them. They just turned off the highway, heading straight for us. The garage went electric. Raven's eyes snapped open. She sat up so fast, Smoke's jacket fell off her shoulders. Her face went white, dead white. She wasn't breathing. "That's Daddy's truck," she whispered. "I know the sound. I know it. He's coming. He found me." Steele moved fast. He scooped Raven up. She weighed nothing, absolutely nothing, and handed her to Gears. "Back room, steel door. Lock it. You don't open it for anyone but me. Steele, go, now." Gears carried Raven toward the back. She grabbed Steele's sleeve as they passed. "You promised," she said. Her voice broke for the first time. "You promised he wouldn't take me." Steele looked her in the eyes. "And I keep my promises. Go with Gears." The steel door closed. The lock clicked. Steele turned to his men. Every one of them was already on their feet, already moving into position, already becoming what the world had always accused them of being. "Nobody touches the girl," Steele said. "Nobody gets past us. Whatever happens out there, that kid walks out of here tomorrow morning." "Understood, understood." 14 voices said as one. Kodiak cracked his neck. Smoke pulled on his gloves. Hammer and Colt took positions at the gate. Knock and Ridge looped around to flank from the rear. The rest spread out in a formation that looked instinctive but was anything but. The headlights hit the compound fence. 3 vehicles, a black pickup truck, 2 dark sedans. They stopped engines running. The truck door opened. Marcus Hartley stepped out, 34 years old, sandy blonde hair, athletic build, the kind of face you'd see at a PTA meeting, a church fundraiser, a neighborhood barbecue. The kind of man who smiled at everyone and meant none of it. But tonight the mask was gone. His eyes were wooled. His shirt was stained, not blood, sweat, panic, fury. In his right hand he held a pistol. "Where is she?" Marcus screamed into the night. "Where's my daughter?" 2 men emerged from the sedans behind him. They didn't scream. They didn't stumble. They moved like machines, smooth, calibrated, professional. One was tall, shaved head, no expression. The other was stocky brown hair, a windbreaker that did nothing to hide the weapon underneath. These weren't angry fathers or local thugs. These were operators, the kind of men who made problems disappear. "She took something from me," Marcus shouted. "That drive belongs to us. That little girl doesn't even know what she's carrying." Steele stood at the garage entrance, arms at his sides, voice carrying like a cannon. "Mr. Hartley, put the weapon down and we can talk. Don't tell me what to do. You have no idea what you're involved in." "I think I know exactly what I'm involved in." Steele didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "I know about the drive, I know about Nora, and I know about every name on that ledger." Marcus's face changed. The rage was still there, but underneath it, something shifted. Fear, raw animal fear. "You don't. You can't." The tall man from the sedan spoke. His voice was flat, dead, no accent, no emotion. "Hartley, you said this was contained. It is. She's 5. She doesn't understand." She walked to a motorcycle compound in the middle of the night carrying 3 years of operational records. "That's not contained. That's a liability." Marcus turned back to Steele. "Just give me the kid in the drive. Please, you don't know what these people will do. To you, to her, to everyone." "Nobody's handing you anything," Kodiak said, stepping into the light. In the floodlights, he looked like a wall with a pulse. "You're making a mistake," Marcus's voice cracked. "A huge mistake. That drive goes public, people die. Not just me, everyone connected. They'll burn this whole county. Then they'll have to burn through us first," Steele said. The tall man raised his weapon, pointed it directly at Steele's chest. Last chance, the drive, the phone, and the girl, or we take them, silence. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Steele didn't move. Raven was right about one thing he said quietly. Her mama sent her to the right place. Then it happened. Fast, coordinated, brutal. Hammer and Colt moved from the gate silent, covering the angles. Knox and Ridge appeared from behind the sedans like ghosts. Kodiak charged the tall man. Not ran, charged. 280 pounds of fury moving at a speed that shouldn't have been physically possible. The tall man fired one shot, missed, didn't get a second chance. Kodiak hit him like a truck hitting a telephone pole. They went down together. Kodiak came up. The tall man didn't. Marcus raised his pistol. His hand was shaking so badly the barrel waved in circles. Stay back. Stay. Smoke came from the side. Low, fast, military. He caught Marcus's gun hand, twisted it, and the weapon hit the gravel. Bishop pinned him. Rust had the zip ties out before Marcus could scream. The stocky man was smarter. He tried to run. He made it 4 steps before Viper, who everyone forgot had been a Golden Gloves boxer before the Marines caught him with a single strike to the jaw that dropped him like a sack of sand. 90 seconds. Start to finish. Marcus Hartley lay face down on the gravel, zip-tied, screaming into the dirt. You're dead, all of you. You don't know what you've done. They'll send more. They'll Steele crouched beside him. Close. Quiet. Here's what I know, Marcus. I know you killed your wife. I know you terrorized your daughter. I know you ran poison through 4 counties and paid cops to look the other way. And I know that right now, the only reason you're still breathing is because there's a little girl in that back room who deserves to see you in handcuffs, not in a ditch. He stood up. Gears. Call the FBI field office in Nashville. Ask for Agent Dutch Brennan specifically. Tell him we've got a multiple homicide, a narcotics network, and public corruption. Tell him to bring Child Protective Services. And tell him to bring somebody he trusts because half this county's law enforcement is compromised. Already dialing. Steele walked to the steel door, knocked 3 times, the pattern they'd agreed on. The lock clicked. Gears opened it. Raven stood behind him, eyes wide, hands balled into fists at her sides. She wasn't crying, she wasn't shaking. She was standing. Is it over? She asked. It's over. Is my daddy going to jail? Yes, forever. Steele looked at this girl. 5 years old. She had walked miles through the dark, carried a knife and a flash drive and her dead mother's phone. Followed instructions her mother had drilled into her, knowing this night would come. She had walked into a garage full of strangers and asked them to save her life. And they had. Forever, Steele said. Raven nodded once. Then she picked up her purple backpack, zipped it closed, and held it against her chest. Can I have my backpack now? It's yours, sweetheart. It was always yours. Raven walked past him, past Kodiak, past all of them, and sat in the corner where she'd slept. She placed the backpack in her lap. She straightened the butterfly patch that was coming loose. And then so quietly that only Smoke standing closest could hear, she whispered, I did it, Mama. I found them, just like you said. The FBI arrived at 6:22 in the morning. 4 agents in 2 black SUVs and a woman from Child Protective Services who introduced herself as Dorothy Imogen Marsh. 53 years old, silver-streaked brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that said she'd stopped being surprised by humanity a long time ago. She was wrong about that. The lead agent, a man named Dutch Brennan, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense, walked past the 3 zip-tied men on the gravel without blinking. He'd been briefed on the call: multiple homicide, narcotics network, corrupted law enforcement, What he hadn't been told was that the key witness was 5 years old and currently eating scrambled eggs cooked by a man named Kodiak who had hands the size of frying pans. Mr. Calloway, Brennan said, extending his hand. That's me. You want to walk me through what happened here? Steele walked him through everything. The girl arriving, the backpack, the knife, the phone, the flash drive. The letter addressed specifically to him, Marcus Hartley showing up with two armed associates, the confrontation, the takedown. Brennan listened without interrupting. When Steele finished, Brennan looked at the three men on the ground, then at the 14 bikers standing behind Steele, then at the small blonde girl sitting on an overturned milk crate, eating eggs with a plastic fork. You're telling me a 5-year-old walked here in the middle of the night carrying enough evidence to dismantle a 4-county drug operation? That's what I'm telling you. And her mother planned the whole thing, down to the last detail, researched us specifically. Brennan was quiet for a moment. I've been doing this for 19 years. I've never heard anything like this. Neither have we. Brennan sent 2 agents to process Marcus and his associates. The third began cataloging the evidence. Brennan himself sat down across from Raven with a kind of careful practiced calm that said he'd interviewed children before. Hi, Raven. My name is Agent Brennan. I work for the FBI. Do you know what that is? Raven looked at him. The police that are higher than the other police. Brennan almost smiled. That's pretty close. I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Mama said I should tell everything to the people who can help. Are you the people who can help? I'm going to try. Raven set down her fork. Okay, but I'm keeping my backpack. You can keep your backpack. Raven told him everything. The yelling, the hitting, the night she hid in her closet and listened to her mother cry. The night she heard the worst sound, not a scream, not a crash, silence. A silence that came after sound and didn't end. She told him about crawling to the top of the stairs and seeing her father dragging something wrapped in a sheet toward the basement door. She told him about her mother's instructions. The bail, the road, the white line on the road, the men with the loud bikes, the specific name Matt Calloway. She told it all in a flat, steady voice, the voice of a child who had rehearsed this, who had been prepared for this moment by a mother who knew she might not be there to do it herself. Brennan recorded every word. When Raven finished, he looked at Steele with an expression that had nothing professional about it. It was just raw human shock. We'll need the original flash drive, the phone, and the knife for evidence, Brennan said. The copies your man made will need those locations too. You'll get everything Steele said, but I need something from you first. What's that? Tell me the people on that drive. The deputies, the DA's clerk. Tell me none of them are going to walk. Brennan held his gaze. I can't make promises, but I can tell you that what's on that drive is the biggest break we've had in this region in a decade. Nobody's walking. He paused, his voice dropped lower. And still there's something else. The letter mentioned that Nora met with me 6 months ago. She was right. Marcus knew about it within 2 hours. We have a leak in the Nashville field office. I need you to keep copies of everything secure. Don't trust anyone but me until we root out whoever's dirty. Steele nodded, already done. And the girl Brennan looked at Dorothy Marsh, who had been standing nearby watching writing notes. That's her department. Dorothy Marsh sat down at the plywood table across from Steele after the FBI had cleared out with Marcus Hartley and his associates in custody. Her pen was poised over a legal pad. Her face was professional, neutral, the kind of neutral that came from decades of making decisions that shattered lives. Mr. Calloway, let me be direct with you. I'd prefer it. Raven Hartley has no immediate family available. Her mother is deceased. Her father is in federal custody. Her maternal aunt lives in Oregon, but has an active substance abuse record and is ineligible for emergency placement. Her paternal relatives are either named on that flash drive or associated with individuals who are. Raven's maternal grandmother passed away 2 years ago. So what happens to her? She enters the foster care system. I'll find an emergency placement within 48 hours, somewhere safe, stable, with a license number. Dorothy stopped writing. Excuse me, she's not going into the system. She stays here. Dorothy Marsh set her pen down. She looked at Steele. She looked at the compound around them. She looked at the 14 men in leather who were very clearly listening to every word even though they were pretending not to. Mr. Calloway, you are the president of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. You have a criminal record that includes felony assault and narcotics possession. You live in a compound that until 12 hours ago was being used for activities I probably don't want to know about. And you're asking me to leave a traumatized 5-year-old child in your care. I'm not asking. Then let me be clear about something. This isn't a negotiation. The state of Tennessee has protocols. The state of Tennessee had 2 sheriff's deputies on a drug dealer's payroll, Steele said. His voice didn't rise. It got quieter, which was worse. The state of Tennessee let Marcus Hartley beat his wife for 3 years, and nobody knocked on the door. The state's protocols failed this girl at every level. We didn't. Dorothy opened her mouth, closed it. From across the room, Raven's voice carried. She had gotten off the milk crate and was walking toward them, her backpack dragging on the floor behind her. I'm not going with her, Raven said, looking at Dorothy. Not angry, not scared, just certain. The way only a child who has already survived the worst thing can be certain. Mama sent me here. These are my people. Sweetheart, Dorothy said, softening her voice. I know you feel safe here, and that's wonderful. But there are rules about where children tend. My mama made rules too, Raven said. She said if she couldn't be with me, I should stay with whoever found me first. She said the system doesn't work for girls like me. Dorothy Marsh looked like she'd been slapped, not by a child's words, by the truth in them. Steele leaned forward. Process whatever paperwork you need, emergency placement, temporary custody, whatever the state requires. But that girl is sleeping under this roof tonight and tomorrow night and every night until a judge tells me otherwise. Dorothy Marsh was quiet for a long time. Then she picked up her pen. I'll submit the emergency placement request with you listed as temporary guardian. You'll have a hearing within 30 days. I want weekly check-ins, unannounced visits, full access, done. And Mr. Calloway, yeah, don't make me regret this. Steele didn't answer. He didn't need to. The first 24 hours were chaos, not the kind these men were used to, not the chaos of a deal gone wrong or a rival showing up unannounced. This was worse. This was the chaos of 14 grown men who had absolutely no idea how to take care of a child. Raven needed clothes. She had nothing but a torn nightgown and a pair of borrowed wool socks. Smoke drove to the nearest Walmart at 7 in the morning. He called Kodiak from the girls' section. What size is she? How would I know she's small? They've got size with numbers and sizes with ages. Which do I use? Get both. Get everything. Smoke came back with 4 bags. Half the clothes were too big. Half were wrong. He'd bought a winter coat in July colors and pajamas with trucks on them. Raven looked at the truck pajamas. I like trucks, she said simply, and put them on. The food situation was worse. Kodiak, who had made the scrambled eggs, was the only one who could cook anything more complicated than toast. By noon, the compound's kitchen, a hot plate, a mini fridge, and a microwave was buried under takeout menus and empty cereal boxes. She needs vegetables, Bishop said. She needs protein. Kodiak countered. She needs to eat something that didn't come in a wrapper. Bishop shot back. She needs a nap, Gears added from behind his monitors. She's been up since 2 in the morning. Raven solved it herself. She walked into the kitchen, looked at the mess, and said, Mama used to make me peanut butter sandwiches when things were bad. Can I have one of those? Every man in that compound scrambled to find peanut butter. Colt drove to 3 stores, came back with 4 jars. Raven ate half a sandwich, drank a glass of milk, and fell asleep on the pile of shop rags she'd chosen the night before. She wouldn't sleep anywhere else. She wouldn't let go of the backpack. At 2:15 that afternoon, while Raven slept, Steele called a meeting. All 14 men, no exceptions. I need everyone to understand what we're in now, he said. This isn't temporary. That little girl has nobody. Her mother is dead. Her father is going to prison. Every blood relative she has is either incapable or compromised. The state wants to put her in foster care. I told them no, and they just agreed, Russ said. They agreed to temporary emergency placement. We've got 30 days before a hearing. A judge will decide if she stays. A judge is going to look at us and run, Ridge said. We all know that. Then we give that judge nothing to run from, Steele said. Starting now, this compound changes. I don't care what any of you have going on outside these walls. In here, from this moment forward, everything is clean. Everything is legal. Everything is documented. If you've got product, it's gone. If you've got weapons that aren't registered, they're gone. If you've got anything that a social worker or a judge would use against us, it disappears by sundown. Silence. I'm not asking you to change who you are, Steele continued. I'm asking you to be who that girl thinks we are. Kodiak spoke first. I'm in, whatever it takes. In Smoke said, in Bishop said. One by one around the room, 14 voices, no hesitation. Then let's get to work. By sundown, the compound was unrecognizable. Not physically, it was still a converted auto shop on the edge of Route 9. But everything that couldn't survive a surprise inspection was gone. Gears scrubbed the digital records. Kodiak organized the storage rooms. Smoke and Hammer child-proofed every surface they could find. Locking cabinets, covering outlets, padding sharp corners. They did it badly. They did it with duct tape and pool noodles and zip ties. But they did it. Russ found a children's bed at a thrift store. Small, wooden, painted white. He carried it in on his back and set it up in the cleanest corner of the main room. She needs a real bed, he said. Gruff, not looking at anyone. Can't sleep on rags. Bishop found bed sheets with stars on them. Axel found a pillow. Flint found a nightlight shaped like a moon at a dollar store and plugged it in next to the bed. When Raven woke up from her nap and saw it, she stood completely still. Is that for me? Yes, sweetheart, Steele said. That's yours. I've never had my own bed before. She said it like she was telling them the weather. I slept with Mama. Daddy said I didn't need my own. Nobody responded. Nobody could. Raven walked to the bed, climbed onto it, sat cross-legged with her backpack in her lap. She ran her hand over the star-patterned sheets. Mama would have liked these, she whispered. The first real crisis hit at 2:14 in the morning. Day 2, almost exactly 24 hours after Raven had first appeared. She screamed. Not a child's nightmare scream, not the kind that fades when a light turns on. This was a sound that came from somewhere deeper than sleep, a sound that every man in that compound felt in his chest. Kodiak reached her first. He'd been sleeping, if you could call it that, in a chair 6 feet away. He was beside the bed in 2 seconds. Raven was sitting upright, eyes open but not seeing, rigid, frozen. Her hands were gripping the sheets so hard her knuckles had turned white. She wasn't breathing right. Short, shallow gasps that sounded like she was choking on air. Raven, look at me. She didn't respond, didn't blink, stared straight ahead at something only she could see. Steele Kodiak shouted. Steele was there in seconds. Then Bishop. Then smoke. Then every man in the compound stumbling out of sleeping bags, half awake, terrified. She's dissociating, Bishop said quietly. He recognized it. He'd seen it in veterans, in abuse survivors, in people whose minds had decided that reality was too dangerous to stay in. What do we do? Kodiak's voice was desperate. This massive man, this mountain looking helpless, beside a 5-year-old girl who had gone somewhere none of them could reach. Don't touch her suddenly, Bishop said. Talk to her gently. Give her something real to focus on. Kodiak knelt beside the bed. He didn't touch her. He put his hand on the mattress where she could see it. Raven, it's Kodiak, Uncle Kodiak. You're in the compound. You're safe. Your backpack is right here. Feel the sheets. Those are the star sheets. Russ brought them. Remember nothing. 10 seconds. 20. Then Raven blinked. Once. Twice. Her eyes focused. She saw Kodiak. She saw his hand. She grabbed his index finger. Just his index finger, because that was all her small hand could hold. And she held on like it was the only thing connecting her to the world. He was in my dream, she whispered. Daddy was in my dream. He was wrapping Mama up, and then he came for me. He can't come for you, Kodiak said. He's locked up. Federal agents have him. He's never getting out. But what if he does? Then he goes through me first. And you know what? Nobody goes through me. Raven almost smiled. Almost. Because you're the biggest monster. The biggest in the whole state. Promise you won't leave. Kodiak settled his huge frame onto the floor beside her bed. The floorboards groaned. He leaned his back against the wall and kept his finger extended where she could hold it. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere, not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. Raven's grip loosened. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed. She fell asleep holding Kodiak's finger. Kodiak didn't move until morning. 7 hours on a concrete floor. His back would ache for 3 days. He didn't care. He didn't care even a little. When Steele found them at dawn, Raven asleep in her star bed, Kodiak asleep on the floor with one arm extended up like a bridge to her small hand, he stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he walked away, made coffee, and called a child psychologist. Her name was Dr. Rebecca Sloan. She worked out of Nashville, specialized in childhood trauma. She agreed to see Raven, though her voice carried skepticism when Steele described the living situation. A motorcycle club compound, she repeated. That's correct. Mr. Calloway, I've worked with children in unconventional placements before. Group homes, shelters, extended family situations that were far from ideal. But this is new. We're all figuring it out as we go, Doc. But that girl needs help that we don't know how to give. We can keep her safe. We can keep her fed. But the nightmares, the freezing up, the way she talks about her mother like she's reading a script. We're out of our depth. Dr. Sloan was quiet for a moment. Bring her in Thursday. And Mr. Calloway, bring whoever she's most attached to. Thursday came. 14 bikers loaded into a convoy and drove 45 minutes to Nashville. 14. Because when Steele had asked who wanted to come, every hand went up, and he didn't have the heart to say no. They arrived at Dr. Sloan's office, a small practice in a quiet medical building, and attempted to fit into a waiting room designed for 6. It didn't work. Bikers spilled into the hallway. Kodiak knocked over a magazine rack. Smoke accidentally sat on a child's toy that made a loud squeaking sound and nearly jumped out of his skin. Dr. Sloan came out, looked at the hallway full of leather and tattoos, and said, "Only two can come in. Raven picks. Raven picks Steele and Kodiak, no hesitation." Inside, Dr. Sloan spent the first 10 minutes just talking to Raven. Not about the trauma, not about the night, about normal things. Favorite color, favorite food, favorite animal. Raven answered each question quietly but clearly. Purple, peanut butter sandwiches, dogs, but she'd never had one. Then Dr. Sloan asked the question that changed the temperature of the room. Raven, can you tell me about your mama? Raven's whole body shifted. She sat up straighter. Her hands found the backpack straps. Mama was the smartest person ever. She knew Daddy was bad before anyone else did. She used to tell me, "Baby, the world doesn't believe little girls and quiet women, so we have to make them believe." That's why she kept the phone. That's why she made the flash thing. That's why she taught me to walk in the dark. Were you scared walking in the dark? Yes, but Mama said being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. And when you found the bikers, were you scared of them? Raven looked at Steele, then at Kodiak. For 1 second, then back at Dr. Sloan. I remembered what Mama said. She said the monsters who look scary on the outside are the ones with the softest insides. And the monsters who look normal, Raven's voice dropped. Those are the real ones. Dr. Sloan looked at Steele. Steele's jaw was clenched. Kodiak was staring at the ceiling, blinking hard. After the session, Dr. Sloan pulled Steele aside. "Mr. Calloway, I'm going to be honest with you. Raven is presenting with complex PTSD, the dissociative episodes, the hypervigilance, the emotional flattening. These are survival mechanisms she developed to cope with years of witnessing domestic violence, culminating in the murder of her mother. She is remarkably functional for what she's been through. And a great deal of that is because her mother clearly spent significant time preparing her psychologically. But that preparation has a cost. Raven is operating on instructions. She's executing a plan her mother gave her. At some point, the plan will run out. And when it does, she's going to need the people around her to catch her. What do? You keep doing what you're doing. Consistency, presence, safety. I'll work with her on processing the trauma, but the foundation, the feeling that she's not alone, that comes from you. All of you, we're not going anywhere. I believe you." And that's the first time I've said that to a placement family in a very long time. They drove home in silence. Raven fell asleep in Kodiak's truck, her head against his arm, her backpack in her lap. Back at the compound, Steele gathered the men. Dr. Sloan says Raven has something called complex PTSD. She's going to have good days and bad days. She might push us away. She might test us to see if we leave. She might act like everything's fine and then fall apart without warning. Our job is simple. We stay every time, no matter what. "What about the hearing?" Rust asked. 30 days, Steele. The judge is going to take one look at us, then we give the judge a reason to look twice. Steele looked around the room. At Kodiak, who'd slept on a concrete floor to hold a little girl's hand. At Smoke, who'd driven to 3 stores for peanut butter. At Bishop, who'd recognized a trauma response that trained professionals missed. At Rust, who'd carried a bed on his back. At Gears, who'd encrypted evidence to protect a child he'd known for 3 hours. At every one of them, we become the men she already believes we are. The next 14 days were the hardest any of them had ever lived. Harder than prison, harder than the streets. Because this was a different kind of fight, a fight against habit, against history, against every instinct that had kept them alive in a world that had no use for gentleness. They learned to braid hair. Kodiak watched 17 YouTube tutorials and practiced on rope until his fingers bled. The first time he braided Raven's hair, it was crooked and loose and fell apart in 20 minutes. Raven looked in the mirror and said, "It's the most beautiful braid in the whole world." Kodiak had to leave the room. They learned bedtime stories. Smoke read to her every night. He did voices, bad ones, ridiculous ones, voices that made Raven giggle so hard she snorted. He read the same book 11 nights in a row because Raven asked for it and he couldn't say no. He could bench press 350, but he could not say no to a 5-year-old. They learned meals. Bishop taught himself to cook from a cookbook he found at a gas station. His first attempt at mac and cheese was inedible. His second was barely edible. His third made Raven say, "This is almost as good as Mama's." Bishop treated that almost like a medal of honor. They learned school. Raven needed to be enrolled. Steele, Kodiak, and Gears drove to the nearest elementary school and met with the principal, a woman named Patricia Donovan, who looked at 3 Hells Angels in her office and didn't flinch. "She's been through trauma," Steele said. "Significant trauma. She might have episodes. If she does, you call me. Not CPS, not the police. Me, I'll be here in 12 minutes. Mr. Calloway, we have protocols, 12 minutes. That's my protocol." Mrs. Donovan studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Raven's first day of school was a Tuesday. She stood at the compound gate in a new dress one Dorothy Marsh had brought during her first unannounced visit with her purple backpack on her shoulders. She looked impossibly small against the gravel road and the open sky. "What if they ask about my family?" she said. Steele crouched down. "You tell them your family is big, loud, and rides motorcycles." "What if they're mean to me?" "Then you'd tell them your Uncle Kodiak comes to parent-teacher night." Raven giggled. Then she looked at him with those enormous blue eyes that had seen too much and still somehow held light in them. Daddy Steele. It was the first time she'd called him that, out loud, in the morning sun, like it was a fact. Steele's throat closed. "Yeah, sweetheart. Thank you for keeping your promise." She hugged him, fast, fierce, arms barely reaching, and ran to the school bus. 14 men stood at the gate and watched that bus disappear down Route 9. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Russ took off his sunglasses and wiped his eyes. Smoke cleared his throat so many times Hammer finally told him to stop. Kodiak stared at the road long after the bus was gone. "We can't lose her," he said quietly. "Whatever happens at that hearing, whatever that judge decides, we cannot lose her. We won't," Steele said. But he didn't know that. None of them did. The hearing was 16 days away, and the state of Tennessee didn't care about braided hair or bedtime stories or a man who slept on concrete to hold a little girl's finger. The state cared about records and rules and the kind of family that looked right on paper. And on paper, they looked like exactly the wrong family for Raven Hartley. Dorothy Marsh showed up unannounced that Friday. She walked through the compound with her clipboard and her pen and her professional neutrality. She opened cabinets. She checked the fridge. She examined the bed with the star sheets in the moon nightlight. She watched Kodiak help Raven with her math homework at the plywood table, his enormous finger tracing numbers while Raven counted on her fingers. She wrote 3 pages of notes. She didn't share them. At the door, she turned to Steele. "The hearing is in 2 weeks. The state's attorney is going to argue that this environment is unsuitable. She's going to bring up your record, every single one of your records. She's going to paint a picture for the judge, and it won't be a pretty one, I know." Do you have a lawyer court appointed? Get a better one. And then she left. That night, Steele sat alone at the plywood table after everyone had gone to sleep. Everyone except Kodiak, who was on the floor next to Raven's bed. Always on the floor next to Raven's bed. Steele read Nora Hartley's letter one more time. The last line. Take care of her. Love her if you can. He folded it, put it back. We do. He said to no one. We already do. Steele found the lawyer on a Tuesday, not through connections, not through the club, through Bishop, who had called every legal aid office within 100 miles until a woman named Vanessa Cole called back. She was 51, former public defender, 23 years in family court. She'd taken on cases nobody wanted and won more than she'd lost. She drove to the compound on a Wednesday evening, stepped out of a 10-year-old Honda Civic, looked at the row of Harleys in the converted auto shop and the 14 men watching her from the garage entrance and said, "Which one of you is Calloway?" "That's me. Show me the girl." Steele brought her inside. Raven was at the plywood table with Kodiak drawing. She'd been drawing every day since Dr. Sloan had suggested it as a way to process her feelings. Most of the drawings were the same. Stick figures on motorcycles arranged in a circle around one smaller figure with yellow hair. Sometimes there was a cloud at the top with a woman in it. Sometimes there wasn't. Vanessa sat down across from Raven. She didn't introduce herself as a lawyer. She didn't explain why she was there. She just looked at the drawing. "That's a lot of motorcycles," she said. "That's my family." Raven replied without looking up. "This one is Uncle Kodiak. I made him the biggest because he is the biggest." "Who's the one in the middle?" "That's me." "And who's that?" Vanessa pointed to the cloud. Raven's crayon stopped. "That's Mama. She watches from up there." Vanessa nodded. "She must be very proud of you." Raven finally looked up. "Are you here to take me away?" "No, sweetheart. I'm here to make sure nobody does." Raven studied her for a long moment. Then she went back to drawing. "Good, because I'm not going." Vanessa stood up and walked to the far corner with Steele. She kept her voice low. "I need to be straight with you, Mr. Calloway. I pulled the case file on the way here. The state's attorney assigned to your hearing is Claire Whitfield. She's 34, ambitious, and she's never lost a custody challenge. She's going to come at you with everything. Your record, the club's history, the environment. She's going to argue that placing a traumatized child with a convicted felon who runs a motorcycle gang is not just irresponsible but dangerous. And what are you going to argue the truth? That this child is alive because of you. That she's healing because of you. That her mother, a woman who spent 3 years building an escape plan, chose you. Not a shelter, not a church, not a neighbor. You. Will that be enough?" Vanessa looked across the room at Raven, who was now showing Kodiak her drawing. Kodiak was nodding with intense seriousness, as if he were reviewing architectural blueprints. "Honestly, I don't know. Family court judges have a lot of discretion. If we get someone sympathetic, we have a chance. If we get someone who rules by the book, we're in trouble." "Who'd we get?" Judge Robert Dawson. 61, former Marine, 30 years on the bench. Tough, fair, doesn't tolerate theatrics. Is that good or bad? Ask me after the hearing. Vanessa spent the next 9 days preparing. She came to the compound every evening after work. She interviewed every biker individually. She documented the changes they'd made. The child-proofing, the clean records, the removal of anything questionable. She got letters from Mrs. Donovan at the elementary school. She got a written report from Dr. Sloan. She got a statement from Agent Brennan at the FBI confirming that Raven's testimony and the evidence she'd carried had led to the largest drug bust in the region in 15 years. She also told them what they didn't want to hear. "You're going to be on trial in that courtroom," she said during a group meeting 4 days before the hearing. "Not officially, but practically. Every tattoo, every scar, every felony on your records. The judge is going to look at you and see what the world sees. Dangerous men. Your job is to make him see what Raven sees." How Rust asked. "You show up clean, respectful. You sit behind Steele and you show that judge that you care more about this child than you care about your pride. No attitude, no edge, no leather. Suits if you have them, dress shirts if you don't." 14 bikers looked at each other. Some of them hadn't worn a collared shirt since their last court appearance, and those hadn't gone well. "I don't own a suit," Kodiak said. "Then we're going shopping," Smoke replied. The image of Kodiak in a department store fitting room turning sideways to fit through the door, trying on a sport coat that looked like it was being worn by a refrigerator, would have been funny if the stakes weren't so high. The sales associate, a young woman who visibly paled when 14 Hells Angels walked through the men's section, helped them find blazers, dress shirts, slacks. Rust couldn't tie a tie. Hammer tied it for him. Axel's shoes pinched. He wore them anyway. Kodiak found a navy sport coat that almost fit. Almost. His shoulders strained the seams and his neck fought the collar. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, "I look like a hostage." "You look fine," Steele said. "I look like a bear in a costume." "That's essentially what you are. Let's go." The night before the hearing, Raven couldn't sleep. Not from nightmares. She hadn't had one in 6 days, which was a record, but from fear of a different kind. She found Steele sitting at the plywood table at midnight, going over papers Vanessa had left. "Daddy, Steele." He looked up. "Hey, what are you doing awake?" Raven climbed onto the chair across from him, her bare feet dangling 6 inches off the ground. She was wearing the truck pajamas, and her hair was in 2 braids Kodiak had spent 40 minutes perfecting before bed. "If the judge says no, where do I go?" Steele set down the papers. "The judge isn't going to say no." "But what if he does? Mama taught me to plan for the bad thing. She said hope for the good thing, but have a plan for the bad thing. So what's the plan?" Steele looked at this girl, 5 years old, asking him for a contingency plan at midnight because her dead mother had taught her that hope alone wasn't enough. "The plan," Steele said slowly, "is that we fight. If the judge says no tomorrow, we appeal. If the appeal says no, we appeal again. We get a better lawyer. We get more evidence. We get more people to stand up for you. And we keep fighting until someone with the power to say yes finally says it. What if they never say yes?" Steele reached across the table and took her hand, his scarred, calloused hands swallowing her tiny fingers. "Then I will park my motorcycle outside whatever house they put you in, and I will sit there every single day until they change their mind. And Kodiak will be right next to me, and Smoke, and Bishop, and every single one of your uncles. We will not disappear, Raven. We will not get tired. We will not give up. That's not what this family does." Raven squeezed his hand. "Promise, have I ever broken a promise to you? No. Then you know what my promises are worth." Raven nodded. She slid off the chair, walked around the table, and climbed into Steele's lap. She pressed her face against his chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not the monster kind of scared. The losing everything kind of scared." Steele put his arms around her. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too. You're scared. Terrified." Raven pulled back and looked at his face. "But you're the bravest person I know. After Mama. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. Your mama taught you that. It means being scared and doing it anyway. That's right. Raven put her head back against his chest. Then we'll be scared together, and we'll do it anyway. She fell asleep there, in his lap, at the plywood table. Steele didn't move her. He sat there all night holding her, watching the clock tick toward the morning that would decide everything. The courthouse was a two-story brick building in downtown Ridgerest. Family Courtroom 204. The hearing was set for 10 in the morning. They arrived at 9:15. 14 men in ill-fitting suits and dress shirts and borrowed ties. Kodiak's sport coat had already split along the back seam. Rust had switched his tie 3 times in the parking lot. Smoke kept pulling at his collar like it was strangling him. Raven walked between Steele and Kodiak, holding each of their hands. She was wearing a blue dress that Dorothy Marsh had brought specifically for this day, and white shoes that she'd picked out herself. Her hair was in 2 perfect braids, Kodiak's best work yet. She carried her purple backpack. "You don't need to bring that," Steele had said that morning. "Yes, I do," Raven had replied. "Mama's in there." He didn't argue. The courtroom was smaller than expected. 2 tables facing the bench, a gallery with 6 rows of seats. The state's attorney, Claire Whitfield, was already at her table. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, a stack of files 3 inches thick. She looked at the bikers filing into the gallery, and her expression didn't change. She'd done her homework. Vanessa Cole sat at the defense table. She looked calm. Steele sat next to her. He didn't look calm. Dorothy Marsh sat in the front row of the gallery just behind Steele. Her face was unreadable. Judge Robert Dawson entered at 10:02. He was exactly what Vanessa had described. Tall, lean, gray hair, military posture. A face that suggested he'd heard every lie ever told in a courtroom and wasn't interested in hearing more. "This is a custody hearing regarding the minor child Raven Hartley, currently in temporary emergency placement with Matt Calloway. The state has filed an objection to permanent custody. Miss Whitfield, you may proceed." Claire Whitfield stood. She was polished, professional, and she was devastating. "Your Honor, the state's position is simple. Raven Hartley is a traumatized child who requires a stable, nurturing environment with qualified caregivers. Mr. Calloway is the president of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. He has felony convictions, including assault and narcotics possession. The individuals comprising his household, if we can call it that, collectively have over 40 felony charges on their records. This is not a home. It is a compound. And it is not a family. It is a criminal organization." She opened her files. "The state has identified 3 licensed foster families in the region who are qualified and willing to accept Raven. Each has a clean record, a stable income, experience with traumatized children. Any one of these options represents a safer, more appropriate environment than what Mr. Calloway is offering." Vanessa stood. "Your Honor, may I respond?" "Go ahead." "The state's argument looks perfect on paper. Licensed families, clean records, stable homes. But Raven Hartley's life has never been about what looks perfect on paper. Her father looking perfect on paper. He coached Little League. He attended church. He smiled at neighbors. On paper, Marcus Hartley was a model citizen. In reality, he was a drug trafficker who beat his wife for 3 years and murdered her in front of their daughter. Claire objected. The characterization of the defendant sustained. "Miss Cole, stick to the custody matter." "Yes, Your Honor. My point is this. Raven Hartley's mother, Nora Hartley, spent 3 years preparing for the possibility of her own death. She built an evidence file. She trained her daughter to escape. And she chose deliberately, specifically, where to send her daughter if the worst happened. She didn't choose a licensed foster family. She didn't choose a neighbor or a relative. She chose the Hells Angels because Nora Hartley understood something the state doesn't. That safety isn't about what looks right, it's about what is right. Your Honor, Claire interjected, the wishes of a deceased parent, however sympathetic, do not override the state's responsibility to ensure a child's welfare. They don't. Vanessa agreed. But the child's welfare should be evaluated based on outcomes, not optics. And the outcomes in this case are remarkable. Vanessa presented her evidence. Dr. Sloan's report documenting Raven's psychological progress. Significant reduction in dissociative episodes. Improved emotional regulation. Healthy attachment formation. Mrs. Donovan's letter confirming Raven's school performance. Perfect attendance. Above average grades. Positive social interactions. Dorothy Marsh's placement reports showing a clean, child-proofed environment with consistent routines. Agent Brennan's statement acknowledging the bikers' cooperation with federal law enforcement. Claire Whitfield pushed back on every point. Dr. Sloan's report also notes that Raven exhibits signs of complex PTSD. Is a motorcycle compound with 14 men who have histories of violence really the best environment for managing that condition? Dr. Sloan's recommendation is in the file, Vanessa replied. She recommends continued placement with Mr. Calloway. I'll read her exact words. In 30 years of practice, I have rarely seen a child form healthier attachments in a shorter period of time. The consistency, presence, and emotional investment of this group is exceptional. Exceptional for criminals, perhaps. Exceptional for anyone. Your Honor, Claire said, I'd like to call Dorothy Marsh. Dorothy took the stand. Claire questioned her first. Miss Marsh, in your professional opinion, is the Hells Angels compound a suitable long-term environment for a child? Dorothy paused. Every biker in the gallery held their breath. 3 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. I went in expecting the worst. I prepared removal paperwork before my first visit, and now I've conducted 12 unannounced visits over the course of 3 months. I've observed consistent meal routines, supervised homework sessions, regular therapy appointments, and a bedtime routine that frankly puts most traditional homes to shame. Dorothy looked at the gallery, at Smoke, who was staring at his borrowed shoes, at Kodiak, whose sport coat was held together by a safety pin rust had stuck in the seam 20 minutes ago. These men child-proofed their compound with duct tape and pool noodles because they didn't know how else to do it. They learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. One of them reads the same bedtime story every night because Raven asked for it and he won't say no. She looked back at the judge. These men restructured their entire lives around this child. I've placed hundreds of children in my career. I can count on one hand the placements where I've seen this level of dedication. Claire pressed harder. Miss Marsh's dedication doesn't erase criminal records. These men have been convicted of assault drug charges, weapons violations. How can you guarantee Raven's safety in that environment? I can't guarantee anything, Miss Whitfield. Nobody can. But I can tell you that Raven Hartley came to these men barefoot and bleeding in at 2 in the morning, and they have not let her down once. Not once. Every meal, every nightmare, every school morning, every doctor's appointment, every time she's needed them, they've been there. Can you guarantee that your licensed foster families would do the same? Claire didn't answer. Judge Dawson looked at Steele. Mr. Calloway, I'd like to hear from you. Why should this court grant you permanent custody of this child? Steele stood. He gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. Your Honor, I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm something I'm not. I have a record. The men behind me have records. We've done things we're not proud of. We've been the kind of men that society warns you about. He paused. But 3 months ago, a little girl walked into our garage and asked us to protect her. She didn't see our records. She didn't see our tattoos or our scars. She saw what her mother told her she'd see. People who would fight for her. And her mother was right. Steele's voice didn't waver. I can't give Raven a big house. I can't give her a white picket fence. I can't give her a family that looks good on paper. But I can give her 14 people who would die before they let anyone hurt her again. I can give her a home where she's never alone. I can give her men who are learning every single day how to be better. Not because a judge told them to, but because she makes them want to be. Raven changed us, Your Honor. I don't know how else to say it. She made us want to be the men she already believed we were. Judge Dawson's expression didn't change. Thank you, Mr. Calloway. Is there anyone else? Vanessa stood. Your Honor, Raven has asked to speak, Claire objected immediately. Your Honor, the child is 5 years old. She's not competent to— I'll determine competency, Miss Whitfield, Judge Dawson said. Raven, would you like to come up here? Raven slid off Kodiak's lap in the gallery. She walked to the front of the courtroom, her purple backpack on her shoulders, her white shoes tapping on the floor. She was so small she couldn't see over the podium. The bailiff brought a step stool. Raven stood on it. She looked at the judge. She didn't look scared. Hi, she said. Hi, Raven. Judge Dawson replied. His voice was different now. Still firm, but something underneath had shifted. Do you understand what's happening today? Yes, sir. Some people think my family is too scary to take care of me. And what do you think? I think they don't know what scary really is. Raven's voice was steady, clear. Scary is when your daddy hurts your mama and nobody helps. Scary is hiding in a closet and listening to crying and not being able to do anything. Scary is walking in the dark by yourself when you're 5 and you don't know if the bad man is behind you. The courtroom was silent, completely, absolutely silent. The men in my family look scary. They have tattoos and big beards and loud motorcycles. But they've never made me scared. Not one time. They learned how to braid my hair 'cause I asked. Uncle Kodiak sleeps on the floor next to my bed every night so I don't get nightmares. Uncle Smoke reads me the same book every night because I love it, and he never says no. Uncle Bishop makes me mac and cheese, and he's getting really good at it. Daddy Steele sits with me when I can't sleep, and he tells me that being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. That's what my mama taught me, and they teach me the same thing. Raven looked at Steele, then at Kodiak, then at every man in that gallery. My mama was the smartest person in the whole world. She knew Daddy was bad when nobody else did. She packed my bag and she told me where to go. She picked these men. She picked them for me. And she was right. She was right about everything. Raven turned back to the judge. Please don't take me away from my family. I already lost my mama. I can't lose them too. Judge Dawson didn't speak for a long time. He looked at his papers. He looked at Dorothy Marsh. He looked at Claire Whitfield, who for the first time had nothing to say. He looked at the gallery, at 14 men in borrowed suits and safety pin sport coats, every one of them with wet eyes and clenched jaws, the look of people who were holding themselves together by sheer force of will. Miss Marsh, Judge Dawson said, your final recommendation. Dorothy Marsh stood. She took a breath. Your Honor, in 30 years of social work, I have never seen a child heal as completely or as quickly as Raven Hartley has in the past 3 months. These men created something I didn't think was possible, a stable, loving home that also acknowledges the reality of the dangerous world we live in. Raven doesn't just feel safe, she feels seen, she feels valued, she feels loved, and she feels empowered. My recommendation is to grant permanent custody to Matt Calloway. Judge Dawson nodded. He picked up his pen. He wrote something. He set the pen down. I've been on this bench for 30 years. I've presided over hundreds of custody cases. I've seen every kind of family, traditional, non-traditional, functional, broken. And I've learned one thing in all that time. A family isn't defined by what it looks like. It's defined by what it does. He looked at Steele. Mr. Calloway, your record is concerning. I won't pretend otherwise. But the record of the past 3 months tells a different story. You and your men stepped up for this child when every system that should have protected her failed. You didn't do it for a reward. You didn't do it for publicity. You did it because a 5-year-old girl asked you to, and you haven't stopped since. He looked at Raven. Young lady, your mother would be very proud of you today. Raven's eyes filled with tears for the first time. Thank you, sir. Permanent custody is granted to Matt Calloway with continued oversight by the Department of Child Services. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. For 1 second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Kodiak stood up. The safety pin popped out of his sport coat. The seam ripped open completely. He didn't notice. He didn't care. We did it, he said. His voice broke on the second word. The courtroom erupted. 14 men who had fought, bled, been locked up, been written off, been told they'd never amount to anything, cheered like the world had just cracked open and something good had finally come through. Raven jumped off the step stool and ran. She ran past the bailiff, past the tables, past Vanessa Cole, who was wiping her eyes, past Dorothy Marsh, who wasn't even trying to hide her tears. She ran straight to Steele. He caught her, lifted her, held her against his chest. Daddy Steele, she said into his shoulder. We're a family now, for real. We were always a family, sweetheart. Now it's just on paper. Kodiak was next. Raven reached for him and he took her from Steele and held her like she weighed nothing and meant everything. Smoke put his hand on her back. Bishop closed his eyes and his lips moved silently, and nobody asked what he said. Rust was crying openly and didn't care who saw. Hammer and Cold and Ridge and Axel and Tank and Knox and Gage and Viper and Falcon and Flint. Every one of them pressed close hands on shoulders, arms around each other, surrounding this tiny girl the way they had from the very first night. Claire Whitfield packed her files quietly. At the door, she paused and looked back at the group. She didn't smile, but she nodded once before she left. Judge Dawson watched from the bench. He didn't leave immediately. He sat there for a moment watching 14 men and a 5-year-old girl celebrate a family that nobody would have predicted and nobody could deny. Then he gathered his papers, stood, and walked to his chambers. His clerk would later say that Judge Dawson sat at his desk for 10 minutes before opening his next case file. When asked if he was all right, he said, "Some days this job takes something from you. Today, it gave something back." Outside the courthouse, the sun was high. 14 Harleys gleamed in the parking lot. Raven sat on Steele's bike engine, off feet, nowhere near the pedals, and pretended to drive. Where are we going, Daddy? Steele home. The compound home. The only home that matters. Raven grabbed the handlebars and made engine noises with her mouth. Kodiak laughed. A real laugh. A full laugh. The kind that came from a place he'd forgotten existed. As they loaded into the trucks for the ride home, Agent Brennan pulled Steele aside one more time. "Congratulations," Brennan said quietly. "But stay vigilant. Marcus's cartel doesn't take losses well." We've dismantled most of their network, but there are still people out there who see that flash drive as a death sentence. Watch your back. Steele nodded. We always do. But in that moment, celebrating with Raven in his arms and 13 brothers at his back, the warning felt distant, like smoke from a fire already put out. It wouldn't feel distant for long. That night, the compound was the loudest it had ever been. Not from engines, not from arguments, from music, from laughter, from Raven's voice shrieking with joy as smoke chased her through the yard, from Bishop's best yet mac and cheese being served on paper plates, from Kodiak telling the story of his sport coat splitting open in court, getting bigger and more dramatic with every retelling, and from Steele sitting at the plywood table watching all of it, holding Nora Hartley's letter in his hands. He read the last line one more time. Take care of her, love her if you can. He folded it carefully. He put it in a frame Gears had bought that afternoon. He hung it on the wall next to Raven's family drawing, the one with 14 stick figures on motorcycles and one small figure in the center with yellow hair. Raven found him standing there. What are you looking at? Your mama's letter. Raven stood next to him. She reached up and touched the glass. She knew, Raven said softly. Mama knew you'd say yes. How do you know that? Because she told me the night she packed my bag. She said the men I'm sending you to don't know it yet, but they've been waiting for you their whole lives. Steele couldn't speak. He stood there, jaw-locked, eyes burning, looking at a letter from a dead woman who had seen something in them that they couldn't see in themselves. Raven took his hand. It's okay to cry, Daddy Steele. Uncle Kodiak cries all the time. He thinks I don't see, but I do. Steele laughed. It came out wet and broken and real. Don't tell him you know. I won't. Raven squeezed his hand. Mama also said one more thing. What's that? She said, tell them thank you for becoming what I always knew they could be. The compound went quiet after midnight. Raven was in her starbed, Kodiak was on the floor, Smoke was in his chair. One by one the men settled into their places, the circle of sleeping bags that had become as natural as breathing. Steele turned off the lights. The moon night light glowed. Good night, Daddy, Steele Raven whispered. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Uncle Kodiak. Good night, little one. Good night, Mama. Silence. Then from every corner of that room whispered so softly it was almost nothing. Good night, Mama. 14 voices, one child, one woman they'd never met who had trusted them with the most precious things she had. And in the quiet in the dark, in a converted auto shop on the edge of Route 9, a family held. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of normal, or as normal as life could be when 14 bikers were raising a 6-year-old girl. Raven turned 6. They threw her a party. Kodiak made a cake from a box mix. It collapsed in the middle. Raven said it was the best cake she'd ever had. Agent Brennan called on a Thursday. Steele answered. Thought you'd want to know. Marcus Hartley was sentenced this morning. 3 consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole. The cartel's been dismantled. 18 arrests. The corruption network is gone. 2 deputies, the court clerk, the DA's assistant, all going to prison. And we found the leak in our office. One of our own analysts was on Marcus's payroll. It's over, Steele told Raven that night. Daddy's never coming out, never. Raven nodded, then she went back to her homework. Math problems, addition. She was getting good at it, but something had shifted. Steele saw it, Kodiak saw it, Dr. Sloan saw it during their next session. The plan had run out. For 3 months, Raven had been operating on her mother's instructions. Find the bikers, give them the evidence, stay strong, be brave. She'd executed every step with precision that was breathtaking and heartbreaking in equal measure. But the instructions didn't cover what came next. The instructions didn't cover the morning after the victory, when there was nothing left to fight and the grief finally had room to land. It hit on a Thursday morning, 6 days after Marcus's sentencing. Raven woke up screaming, not the frozen kind, the old kind, the kind that ripped through the compound like a siren. Kodiak reached her first. He always reached her first. But this time Raven pushed him away, hard, both hands against his chest. Her eyes were open but wild, unfocused, looking through him at something only she could see. "Don't touch me! Don't touch me! You're lying! Everybody lies!" Kodiak froze. His hands hung in the air. He looked at Steele, who was 3 steps behind him, and the expression on Kodiak's face was something none of them had ever seen. Helplessness, pure complete helplessness. Raven Steele said carefully, "It's us. It's Daddy Steele. You're in the compound. You're safe." "Safe is a lie," Raven screamed. "Mama said I was safe and she died. She died and she left me. She left me." And there it was, the thing Dr. Sloan had warned them about. The plan had run out. For 3 months, Raven had held it together. Now the grief had found her. Steele sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't touch her. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat there. "She stayed because she couldn't leave," he said quietly. "She stayed because if she ran with you, your daddy would have found both of you. She stayed so you could get out. But I needed her. I need her. I don't want a plan. I don't want a backpack. I don't want evidence. I want my mama." Every man in that compound felt it, in their chests, in their throats, in the places they'd spent years building walls around. Russ turned away. Smoke pressed his fist against his mouth. Hammer walked to the far corner and stood with his back to the room because he couldn't watch a little girl break apart and hold himself together at the same time. Kodiak knelt down on the floor beside the bed. His eyes were red. His voice was barely a whisper. "Raven, can I tell you something?" She didn't answer. She was crying too hard to speak. "I lost my mama too," Kodiak said. "I was 9. She got sick and she didn't get better. And I remember the thing that hurt the most wasn't that she was gone. It was that I was mad at her for leaving, and I felt so guilty about being mad because she didn't choose to leave. She just had to." Raven's sobs slowed. She was listening. "Your mama didn't choose to leave you either. She chose to save you. Those are 2 very different things. And I know it doesn't feel different right now. Right now, it just hurts, and that's okay. You're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to be mad. You're even allowed to be mad at her. Because that's what love does sometimes. It hurts so bad you can't breathe." Raven wiped her face with both hands. "Are you still mad at your mama?" "No, it took a long time, but I'm not mad anymore. Now I'm just grateful. Grateful for every day I had with her. And grateful that she taught me how to love people. Because if she hadn't, I wouldn't know how to love you." Raven looked at him. Really looked. Through the beard and the tattoos and the sid and the scars. She looked at the man underneath, and she climbed off the bed and into his arms. Kodiak held her. He held her like he was trying to absorb every ounce of pain she carried. His massive frame curled around her small body, and he closed his eyes and he rocked her gently, and he didn't say anything else because there was nothing else to say. The healing started that day. Slow, uneven, but real. Dr. Sloan increased their sessions to twice a week. Raven talked about Nora, about the good memories, the park, the birthday candles, the bedtime stories, the way Nora used to call her my little star. Gears added more photos to the digital frame. 63 now. Raven would sit and watch them cycle through telling stories about each one. That was at the library. Mama loved books. That was when we made cookies. I got flour everywhere. That was the day Mama told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. 6 months after the hearing, Raven was 7. She was thriving. School was good. Friends were good. The nightmares had mostly stopped. Kodiak had graduated from sleeping on the floor to sleeping in a cot nearby. And then Raven noticed something. A girl in her class, a girl named Ava, 7 years old, blonde hair, quiet. She came to school with bruises on her arms that she said were from falling. Raven knew better. She sat next to Ava at lunch one day and said, "I know you don't really fall down. I used to say that too." Ava looked at her with eyes that Raven recognized, the same eyes she'd had a year ago, full and empty at the same time. "How did you know?" Ava whispered. "Because I'm the same as you, and I found people who help me. I can help you find them too. I'm scared. I know. Being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. My mama taught me that." My mama taught. Ava cried right there in the cafeteria over a peanut butter sandwich and a carton of milk. Raven handed her a napkin and sat with her until the bell rang and didn't say another word. Because sometimes sitting is enough. That afternoon, Raven came home and told Steele everything. Her daddy hits her mama, and sometimes he hits Ava too, on the arms where the sleeves cover it. Steele's jaw tightened. Did she say anything about wanting help? She said she doesn't know who to trust. I told her I didn't either until I found you. Steele called Dorothy Marsh that evening. Dorothy called the new sheriff's department, the clean one, rebuilt from scratch after the corruption purge. An investigation was opened. Within a week, Ava's father was arrested. Ia and her mother were moved to a shelter. Dorothy handled the placement personally. On the day Ava left school for the shelter, she found Raven at recess and hugged her. "You saved me," Ava said. "No, you saved yourself. I just showed you the door." Raven went home that day and announced that she was starting a club. "It's called Bravehearts," she said at dinner, standing on her chair so everyone could see her. "It's for kids like me and Ava. Kids who've seen bad things. We're going to meet every Saturday and I'm going to teach them what Mama taught me." "What's that?" Kodiak asked. "How to be brave, how to keep evidence, how to find safe people, and how to help other kids who need it." 14 men looked at a 7-year-old girl standing on a chair announcing that she was going to build an organization dedicated to protecting abused children. Standing on a chair in a Hells Angels compound, wearing truck pajamas with Bishop's mac and cheese still on her chin. "Where do we sign up?" Smoke said. The first Bravehearts meeting that happened in the following Saturday. 4 children came. Raven sat them in a circle in the compound's main room with Kodiak and Steele and Bishop standing nearby. Not hovering, just present, just visible, just big enough to make any child feel that nothing in the world could hurt them here. Raven opened her purple backpack. She pulled out coloring books, crayons, emergency contact cards she'd made by hand with Gear's help, and a disposable camera. "This camera is for you," she said to a boy named Marcus, 7 years old, who flinched every time an adult raised a hand near him. "If someone hurts you or someone you love, you take pictures." My mama taught me that. Pictures are proof, and proof is how the bad people go to jail. Marcus took the camera. He held it like it was made of gold. "And this," Raven pulled out a card with the compound's phone number on it, "is for emergencies. If you're scared and you don't know who to call, you call this number. Someone will answer. Day or night, who answers?" A girl named Sophie asked. Raven looked at Kodiak. Kodiak crossed his arms and tried to look as large and as safe as humanly possible. My uncles, Raven said. All 14 of them. By the end of that first meeting, every child had a camera, a contact card, and a coloring book. They'd talked, they'd cried, they'd eaten Bishop's mac and cheese, and they'd left knowing something that every child deserves to know and too few do, that there were people in this world who would fight for them. Brave hearts grew. 4 children became 8. 8 became 15. 15 became 32. The Hells Angels didn't just host the meetings. They became the infrastructure. Kodiak got certified as a crisis intervention volunteer. 3 weekends of training, a written exam, a practical assessment that he passed with the highest score in the class. Bishop started a support group for men on Tuesday nights. Fathers, brothers, uncles who had grown up in violent homes and didn't know how to break the cycle. Gears built a secure website, a digital platform where children could safely upload photographs, recordings, and written accounts of abuse. Everything encrypted, everything anonymous, everything routed directly to Dorothy Marsh's office in the new sheriff's department. Within 6 months, the platform had been used in 11 cases. 9 led to arrests. Smoke taught self-defense classes every Thursday. Teenagers mostly. Kids too old for brave hearts, but too young to protect themselves. The local police department started calling the compound directly, not for crime, for domestic situations where traditional approaches had failed. The new sheriff, a woman named Patricia Vega, told a newspaper reporter, "The Hells Angels have a 100% success rate on domestic calls. There's something about a 6'5" biker showing up at an abuser's front door. It communicates something a badge alone can't." But then came the night that tested everything they built. It was a Tuesday, 2 months after Braveheart started. Raven had just finished her homework. Kodiak was helping her practice spelling words. Steele was going over the books for the motorcycle repair shop. Bishop was in the kitchen making dinner. Then the windows shattered. Glass exploded inward. 4 Molotov cocktails, homemade, crude, but effective. Fire bloomed across the garage floor. Raven Steele was already moving. He grabbed her, lifted her, ran for the back room. Kodiak was right behind them. "Bishop, get the extinguishers." Smoke appeared from the side room with a fire extinguisher already in hand. "Falcon Rust, get water." The flames spread fast. Too fast. Someone had doused the outside walls with accelerant. Through the broken windows, Steele could see 4 figures in the parking lot. "Watching, waiting," Cartel Smoke said. His voice was cold, military. They came to finish what Marcus started. Steele set Raven down in the steel room. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me, Daddy Steele. I promise I'm coming back." "Lock it, now." The door closed. The lock clicked. Steele turned to his men, 14 of them, some armed with extinguishers, some with wrenches, some with nothing but their fists. "They're not getting in," he said, "and they're not leaving." Bishop threw the first extinguisher foam onto the flames. The fire hissed and retreated. Russ dumped a bucket of water, then another. The flames fought back, but they were losing. Outside, the 4 men were getting impatient. One of them raised a weapon, an assault rifle, aimed it at the garage. "Get down," Smoke shouted. Bullets punched through the walls, high, random, meant to scare, not kill. "Not yet. They're trying to flush us out," Kodiak said. "Then we don't go out," Steele replied. "We call Brennan. We hold position. We let them come to us." Gears was already on the phone. "Brennan, it's Gears. Compound under attack. 4 hostiles. Armed. Molotovs and rifles. Raven secure. We need backup now." Brennan's voice crackled through. 10 minutes. Hold position. Do not engage unless they breach." The fire was dying. Bishop and Falcon had it mostly under control. Smoke damage, broken glass, but no structural damage. They'd built this place to last. The shooting stopped. Silence. Steele looked at Kodiak. They're coming in. The front door kicked open. 3 men entered. One stayed outside as lookout. They moved like professionals. Weapons up, clearing corners, looking for targets. They found 14 bikers waiting for them. Not scattered, not panicking, standing in formation, like a wall. The lead man stopped. His weapon wavered. "Where's the girl?" he said. His accent was slight. South American, probably Colombian. "You give us the girl and the evidence nobody else dies tonight." Steele stepped forward. His voice was iron. "The girl's not here. The evidence is with the FBI. You came all this way for nothing." The man's eyes narrowed. "You're lying. Test me." The standoff lasted 5 seconds. Then the man made his decision. He raised his weapon. Kodiak moved first. Even for a man his size, he was fast. He crossed the distance in 3 strides. His hand caught the barrel of the rifle and twisted it up and away. The weapon fired into the ceiling. Concrete dust rained down. The second man tried to swing his weapon toward Kodiak. Smoke hit him from the side. Low, hard, military precision. The man went down, didn't get up. The third man backpedaled toward the door. Ridge and Colt were already there. They blocked his exit. The man dropped his weapon, raised his hands. "Smart," Steele said. Outside, the lookout heard the commotion and ran. They let him go. One witness to tell the cartel what happened here was useful. Steele zip-tied the 3 men. Kodiak checked them for other weapons. Found 2 pistols and 3 knives. Sirens approached. Not just Sheriff Vega, FBI. Agent Brennan had called in everyone. Steele walked to the steel room. Knocked 3 times. The door opened. Raven stood there, eyes wide, but not crying, not shaking. "Is it over?" "Yes, sweetheart, it's over. This time for real." "Did the bad men get past you?" Steele smiled. "Not one of them." Raven looked past him at the compound, at the broken windows, the scorch marks, the 3 zip-tied men on the floor. "Uncle Bishop's kitchen is on fire," she said. Bishop appeared behind Steele. His face was covered in soot. "We'll fix it, little one. We always do." Within the hour, the compound was swarming with law enforcement. Sheriff Vega, Agent Brennan, 4 more FBI agents. The 3 attackers were taken into custody. Brennan pulled Steele aside. This was the last of them. The remnants of Marcus's network. "We've been tracking them for weeks. They were desperate. Stupid. Now they're done." "You sure?" Brennan nodded. "The cartel's leadership is in prison. The local operation is dismantled. The evidence from Nora's drive has been used in 16 convictions so far. There's nobody left who wants revenge badly enough to try again." Steele looked at the compound, at his men cleaning up glass and boarding windows, at Raven sitting on the plywood table watching them work with her purple backpack in her lap. "We're going to need better security," he said. Brennan smiled. "I'll see what I can do." 1 year after Raven had walked into the compound barefoot and bleeding, Steele told the men they were building something. Not a room, not an addition, a garden, behind the compound, in the patch of dirt that used to hold nothing but weeds and oil stains. For Nora, he said. That was all he needed to say. They worked for 2 days. 14 men who could strip a motorcycle engine in an hour but had never planted a flower in their lives. Bishop looked up gardening tutorials. Gears ordered plants online. Kodiak dug holes that were twice as deep as they needed to be because he didn't know how deep was enough and figured more was better. They planted lavender because Raven said her mama's perfume smelled like vanilla and lavender. They put in a bench, wooden, hand-built by Smoke, slightly crooked but solid, and in the center a flat stone with words that Raven had chosen herself. To Nora Catherine Hartley, who knew monsters could have the softest hearts. The morning of the anniversary, Raven placed a letter on the stone. She'd written it the night before lying in her starbed, with the photo frame cycling through images of her mother's face. She read it aloud. Every man stood behind her. Nobody interrupted, nobody breathed. Dear Mama, it's been 1 year since you packed my bag and told me to run. I want you to know that I ran as fast as I could, and I found them just like you said I would. The men with the loud bikes, the good kind of scary. You were right about everything, Mama. You were right that they would protect me. You were right that I needed to be brave. You were right that the world needs people who see bad things and don't look away. Daddy Steele makes really good pancakes now. Uncle Kodiak still sleeps next to my bed. His back hurts sometimes, but he won't stop. Uncle Smoke still reads me the same book every night. I still haven't told him to stop. Uncle Bishop's mac and cheese is almost as good as yours. Almost. I started something called Brave Hearts. It's for kids like me. Kids who've seen the bad things. I give them cameras and phone numbers, and I tell them what you told me. That being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. 32 kids so far, Mama, and I'm not stopping. I miss you every single day. But I'm not sad the way I used to be. Now, when I miss you, I look at your pictures and I remember the good things. The swings at the park, the birthday candles, the funny faces in the mirror, the way you called me your little star. I am your little star, Mama, and I'm shining as bright as I can. I love you more than all the stars. Raven. She placed a letter on the stone. She touched the lavender. She stood up. Behind her, 14 men were wrecked. Kodiak had given up any pretense of composure. Tears ran freely into his beard. Smoke's jaw was clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. Rust had his arm around Axel, and neither of them would ever admit it later, but neither of them pulled away. Bishop's lips were moving silently. Hammer and Colt and Ridge and Knox and Flynn and Tank and Gage and Viper and Falcon stood shoulder to shoulder in a line like soldiers at attention, honoring a woman they'd never met, who had given them the greatest gift of their lives. Steele stood directly behind Raven. He didn't cry. His eyes were red and his throat was tight and his hands were shaking. But he didn't cry, because Raven turned around and looked up at him with those eyes. Blue, enormous, no longer empty, but full, so full, and she smiled. Thank you, Daddy Steele. For being what Mama knew you could be. Steele knelt down. He took her hands. Your Mama saved us, Raven, not the other way around. She sent you to us because she knew we were broken, and she knew that the only thing that could fix us was you. Mama was smart like that, the smartest. Raven hugged him. Not the fast, fierce hugs from the early days. A slow one, a settled one. The hug of a child who knows she's home and doesn't need to hold on tight because she knows nobody's letting go. That evening, the compound was alive. Music played. Bishop grilled burgers, a new skill learned from YouTube, slightly charred, but nobody complained. Raven ran through the yard while Smoke chased her, his massive frame lumbering after a girl who shrieked with joy every time he got close and pretended to be too slow to catch her. Gears set up the photo frame outside so it projected Nora's pictures onto the garage wall. 63 photographs of a woman laughing, loving, living, a woman who had spent the last years of her life in hell but had made sure her daughter would find heaven. The kids from Bravehearts came. Ava brought flowers. Marcus brought a card he'd made. Sophie brought cookies her mother had baked. Her mother, who was safe now, who was healing now because a 7-year-old girl with a purple backpack had shown her daughter how to be brave. At the end of the night, when the music had faded and the burgers were gone and the kids had been picked up by parents who hugged their children a little tighter than usual, Raven sat on the front step with her backpack beside her. Steele sat next to her. Daddy Steele. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Mama can see all this? The garden and the brave hearts and the pictures and everything? Steele looked at the sky, clear, full of stars. Every single one. I think she's got the best seat in the house. Raven leaned against him. I'm going to help every kid who needs it. Every single one, no matter how long it takes. I know you will. Because that's what brave hearts do. That's what brave hearts do. 20 years later, Raven Elizabeth Hartley, 25 years old, stood in front of the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. She wore a navy blue suit, a badge clipped to her belt, a pin on her lapel, the Brave Hearts logo, a purple backpack with wings. She graduated top of her class, criminal psychology, specialization in crimes against children. Behind her, 14 men stood in a semicircle. Older now, hair gray or gone, beards longer, bodies slower, but still there, still standing. Steele 66 walked with a cane now. Kodiak 65 had finally retired from crisis intervention work. Bishop ran 3 support groups a week. Smoke taught self-defense classes to his grandchildren. Gear's website had been used in over 400 cases, 317 convictions. Bravehearts had chapters in 8 states. 1,273 children helped. Raven turned to face them. She held a small frame. Inside it, a photograph of Nora Catherine Hartley, smiling, holding a 2-year-old Raven in her arms. I did it, Mama Raven whispered. I became the police officer who believes little girls. Steele stepped forward. His cane tapped on the concrete. She'd be proud, he said. His voice was gravel still, but softer now. Softer than it had any right to be. I know, Raven said, because I learned from the best, from her, and from all of you. She looked at each of them. At Kodiak, who'd held her finger through 100 nightmares. At Smoke, who'd read the same book 600 times. At Bishop, whose mac and cheese had become legendary. At Rust and Hammer and Cold and Ridge and all of them. At the men who'd looked like monsters and turned out to be heroes. At the family that paper said shouldn't exist but did anyway. We should get going, Kodiak said. Long drive back to Tennessee. Wait, Raven said. She pulled out her phone. She held it up. One picture. For the wall at the compound. They gathered around her, 14 bikers and 1 FBI agent, a family that nobody would have predicted and nobody could deny. Raven set the timer, ran back, squeezed in between Steele and Kodiak. The camera clicked. In that photograph, you can see everything. The wrinkles and the gray hair and the matching Bravehearts pins they all wore now. You can see the love and the pride and the impossible truth that sometimes the most broken people become the best healers. And if you look very closely in the reflection of the glass behind them, you can almost see a woman with blonde hair and a gentle smile watching over them all. Back at the compound that night, they hung the photograph on the wall, right next to Nora's letter, right next to Raven's childhood drawing of 14 motorcycles in a circle, and beneath it in a child's careful handwriting from 20 years ago preserved under glass, Braveheart's rule number 1. Being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. Rule number 2. You are never alone. Rule number 3. The scariest looking people sometimes have the biggest hearts. And underneath, in Kodiak's large, uneven handwriting, rule number 4: family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. Raven stood in the compound one last time before heading back to Quantico for her first assignment. She touched the purple backpack hanging on the wall, the one that had carried evidence and hope and the future of a 5-year-old girl who refused to give up. "Thank you," she whispered, to Nora, to the men, to the compound itself. "Thank you for being exactly what I needed when I needed it most." Outside, 14 Harleys sat in a perfect row, their engines cold, their chrome gleaming under the Tennessee moon. And somewhere in a heaven that looked an awful lot like a kitchen, with star-shaped pancakes and lavender-scented air, a woman named Nora Catherine Hartley smiled, because her little star was shining, just like she'd always known she would. Some stories don't end with justice served. They end with a little girl who found 14 monsters and turned them into the best family she'd ever known, who proved that courage doesn't have an age limit, that heroes ride loud motorcycles and have scarred hands and gentle hearts, that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a man with a gun or a network with power or a system that fails. The most dangerous thing in the world is a 5-year-old girl with a backpack full of truth and a mother's love that death itself couldn't stop. And that little girl is still out there, still carrying her backpack, still shining bright as every star in the sky.